I'm Dream Queen. You're in the cab with me, and I'm joined here with my friend Aquia. Welcome in.
Hey. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here on an early Saturday morning.
It's my pleasure.
So, a friend of mine, new friendship here. Mm-hmm. Do you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Let's see. Well, I'm an ancestral wisdom carrier, teacher, land steward. I have the honor and pleasure of being a dueña of the Sky Tribe's Mother House. I am a medicine maker, music maker, and weaver. I love to collaborate, first and foremost with the Pachamama, the soil, the waters, the moon, the sky, the wind, ritual fire, and my people, Afro-Indigenous, queer, and trans gatekeepers across the diaspora. So that's me.
I love it. So you said a dueña? Mm-hmm. Tell me what that is. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, dueña is keeper of the home. You know, dueña is a word that we've developed more together in under my teacher, Dr. G. Love, who's been one of my main earth stewardship teachers. So dueña for the lineage of learning I've had in land stewardship is really one who works with all the elements of the land and spirit to hold space for self and other people.
Just for the benefit, because I know this, but you're local here.
Yes.
And we're just meeting you.
Yes. I've made a great return to my home state of New Mexico, where I actually was raised. I was raised in Albuquerque. Ran around learning a lot, including to my ancestral home of Louisiana, and came back here recently, just about a year and a half ago. So
welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, good. And we met over here in the village a couple times.
Yes.
You know, and I was like, what is black person waving at me? Hey, tourist, what's up?
Right.
You know, and so I appreciate you joining here on the show. I saw you too many times for me to realize that you
right.
were not a tourist.
You caught me. I was pretending. I was playing tourist, trying to keep it cool, trying to be regular, but you caught me.
Yeah, I was like,
which is good. It was perfect timing. I was ready to make some friends. So thank you.
Well, no, word. And I got to say, you know, as I grow my show here, it is my desire to have more Afro and Afro-Indigenous and Indigenous voices represented on the show. And we've been covering literature and thought from people of, you know, Indigenous descent and African descent. And I've only had the pleasure, you're my second guest. You know, no diss to the white folks. I love y'all. Y'all are my village and my homies, but really I feel like I'm able to branch out here and give more voice to our people.
Yeah.
And I love that. You didn't know I was going to choose that Sweet Honey in the Rock song.
I did. It was such a good choice. So iconic.
Yes. So, and I want to just say that people can find the show in the cab radio at Linktree, and you can listen to the entire rebroadcast on Mixcloud. You can catch the portions without music on any of the podcast platforms, wherever you find your podcast. But please just browse around and listen to the whole thing, because the music really is a big part of the show. And I love how you started to talk about your work with the ancestors. Are you able to talk a little bit more about that?
Sure.
Like the eternal nature of the soul, I talk a lot about on this show, that we need not fear death because it is not the end. You know, as you see and observe and feel as you're talking about the land and your work with the land and the ancestors at the same time. You have any wisdom you want to offer the audience on that?
Oh, sure. You know, it's funny. I almost was going to say I was lucky. You know, my father died when I was very young. I was 6 years old. but which we'll probably get into because we are talking about
We
death.
into it.
Okay,
We into it.
we're
only got
there.
40
We're
more
there.
minutes. We into it. Be in it. Tell the story.
Yeah, I like to say death raised me because I experienced death before knowing what it was. Like people were trying to explain, like, and because my father was terminally ill with cancer.
I'm sorry.
And I couldn't comprehend that as a child of like, okay, where is he going? And I just was telling him like, don't go. Why don't you stay? So experiencing death before understanding what it was. And what a magnificent impact it has on your life. That shaped me a lot, but part of what shaped me is a childlike attempt to maintain connection with my father, who became the first ancestor I was in deep relationship with. And I started to be able to understand feeling his presence and feeling his love. And, I even as a child made what later I would call an altar. I'm like, look at my little child self. That was an altar. I was like, this is my little daddy corner.
Did your parents or grandparents practice ancestral worship that you were raised with at this time?
So my father did, which is interesting. And I think he put a lot of information on me knowing he was dying. He gave me a lot of spiritual practices, but I was pretty little. And my mom too, different lineage of ancestral practice from my mom. She out here like a white witch, a little more pagan Irish. And my dad.
You're biracial, or how do you want to say that? Biracial, mixed? I don't know. What were you saying these days?
I'm black, but I do.
I'm black.
I'm light-skinned black.
Black color.
That's what the world told me and what I feel.
You're black.
Yeah. I'm a light-skinned black.
Which means we everything.
Right. And then so the question is, where the white from? And the answer is my mom. Yeah.
And she was here in New Mexico. Or would you say she was raised in New Mexico, or
no, she took us out here after my father died.
Okay.
So I was actually born in the Redwoods, Redwood City. Right. So it was quite a change. So yeah, after my father died, she brought us out. She knew some folks out here. It was cheaper, no earthquakes. Mm-hmm. And so I went from like learning about death to coming to the desert at a young age. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, we totally digressed there.
Did we?
Yeah, I know. We're not at
You're
the
like, where your mama from?
I know this whole thing. This show is just great because we like to keep it casual and just go with the flow. And also, you and I have sat together, and 3-4 hours has just breezed on by. So I've turned this clock around for both of us.
Right. Keep us on track.
Keep one eye on.
We can both talk. So just.
But you were saying that your mom and your mom also gave you some ancestral reverence.
I wouldn't say the practices I learned more were from teachers that I would meet later, in multiple Afro-Indigenous traditions, that really resonated with what I experienced in, say, my primary ancestral relationship with my father. So in terms of altar practice or what to do when someone dies or, different options. Like I remember I have one of my teachers, the Dr. Reverend MC Stephanie Burns. She helped me realize you could set boundaries. Like I was like, oh, in the middle of the night, she's like, you can just tell them, talk to me this way, So it's been shaped by a lot of teachers, but my parents definitely had ancestral reverence, just not the practices.
Right. Mm-hmm. I remember, I guess I lost my paternal grandmother when I was, I can't remember if my paternal grandmother went before my maternal grandfather. But I remember distinctly feeling like I was visited by my maternal grandfather. I was about, he passed when I was 17 of colon cancer. It was a late stage when they found it. We were very close. He raised me. with my mom and my maternal grandmother. And
Wow.
we did that. And he was a minister in the church. And, I didn't feel like his presence probably until I was about 21. I mean, I remember sitting in my apartment, the edge of the bed, and it was after I had put up my first altar, and his picture and my paternal grandmother's pictures were the only ancestors that I knew of at that point. I put on there with a white candle, and I literally felt like someone sat on the bed next to me. Like it was, and I was like,
Right.
wow, like, and I felt like a pressure on my leg as if, I was being comforted and acknowledged. And I was like, whoa, this is real. Like I had just made acquaintance with a woman who practiced Ifa and was Ifa priestess and was very involved with a house in DC, and they were very much in it. And so I think that doorway being open for me allowed some energies to pass through the gate that I could recognize, other than just something going bump in the night.
Right. Well, that's something going bump in the night's real, though. I love Jambalaya by Louisa Cheech. It's a good one that I read earlier on that helped me realize, like, oh, yeah, I don't have to be so... Because it can be scary. Like, when I first encountered my father's energy, I was like, I wasn't like, oh, yay. I was horrified. I was so scared. I was like, is there a shadow? And I did have a little bit of a ability to see spirits as a young person. So thank goodness I had teachers, because it can be scary.
Oh, yeah.
Until you recognize, we've lost a lot of our cultural village ways that pretty much all of us came from at some point, right? So if we just learned that, like, yeah, and then there's visiting, and this is how you handle it. But a lot of people, I don't know, your family were they Christian?
Yes.
Yeah, same. Like once you got to the grandparents, they were too Christian to talk about. I mean, my aunties would be like, "You're not doing that hoodoo voodoo stuff, are you?" And I'd be like, "No, like, But so a lot of stuff wasn't talked about when it came to ancestors.
It was interesting for me because I grew up in. My grandparents had a dicey past. I find out more the older I get, and the different doors of conversation that are open up with me and my mom and my aunt, that I'm 48 right now, and I'm just like, they did what? And they're like, yeah, because I remember my granddad didn't go to theology school until his 60s. So I was like, yeah, so he did this later on in life. So I'm not going to tell all the radio what they was doing, but they had life. And so I think that might explain a little bit more of the openness that was in the household. Like I went to school, in art school, and like I was around all different types of people in high school, and I got opened up to, like Wicca and people with different spiritual practices from Europe. And so I started going to the little pagan store, and my mom is into astrology, numerology, esoteric stuff. And my grandfather was assistant pastor at the church, and my grandma was a missionary. We all living in this big old house in DC.
Nice mix.
All doing our own thing, though, and it was cool. Nobody ever came into my room while I found the old candelabra in the basement, and I got my little candles going. They're like, don't burn the house down, Jada. But my
okay,
books,
so you was making little altars too.
I had little things. I didn't know what I was doing though, but I would read the book, and and talking to the lady at the store and going through my mom's books and trying to understand things as a teenager. But no matter what, I didn't really feel like nobody barged in my room and was like, don't do that pagan stuff, and I think that's great, because here we are with, belonging to a class of ancient philosophers with a diverse, spiritual understanding. So I was able to take a little bit of this and that. So I get that vibe. But my first real book on Afro indigenous diasporic religion was Jambalaya and I just got a reading from Yeye last year. It's nice to be in connection with our ancestors. I should read the poem.
Let's go.
I'm gonna read the poem.
Okay.
And bring everybody into it. All right, hold on. So if y'all are new to the book, The Prophet is by Kahlil Gibran, and it is in public domain, and you can go over to KhalilGibran.com or in the Cab Radio at Linktree and scroll down and find a link where you can get the book, okay? And Al-Mustafa is who we are referring to as the Prophet. He's been in Orphalese for 12 years, and he's on his way back to his homeland. And he's been observing the village, doing his own thing as a hermit type person. And he comes on his way. He sees a ship arriving in the distance through the mists. And he begins his sort of sad walk down to the seawall. And the villagers put down their work and they begin to follow him and regret his leaving. And the high priestess of the town, Almitra, comes out and meets them in the square before the temple. And asks him before he leaves if he could impart what he's observed of them and their habits and their life and tell them his wisdom so that they may not be forgotten. And he says, sure, wait on my boat. It's going to be a couple of hours. Look at this, way over there. Everybody knows how long it takes for a boat to dock. So now here we are after all of these subjects. Finally, then Almitra spoke, saying, we would ask now of death. And he said, you would know the secret of death, but how shall you find it unless you seek it in the heart of life? The owl whose night-bound eyes are blind unto the day cannot unveil the mystery of light. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. For in the depth of your hopes and desires lies your silent knowledge of the beyond. And like seeds dreaming beneath the snow, your heart dreams of spring. Trust the dreams, for in them is hidden the gate to eternity. Your fear of death is but the trembling of the shepherd when he stands before the king, whose hand is to be laid upon him in honor. Is the shepherd not joyful beneath his trembling, that he shall wear the mark of the king? Yet is he not more mindful of his trembling? For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. Kahlil Gibran, the Prophet, on death. Yeah, I always do a pause after this, but radio don't suffer pauses too much. So you told me you studied this. I gave you this book a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I've read this poem many times, and I feel like I read it back in the day, The Prophet, somehow, and it's deep. I mean, okay, what I love about Gibran, all the poems, but especially this poem, when you're talking about something that's so mysterious, like, humans have had death in common all this time, and we still are like, what is it? We don't. You're like, you would have thought someone would have figured something out,
But that goes back to that chapter on religion. They put the two together.
Yes,
and it really,
right. And the way he speaks in his poems, evoking that feeling, like the shepherd trembling beneath the hand of a king, and like associating that feeling with death, to me was really deep. Like I had that intensity, almost like, just feeling that intensity in my body from reading the words. I was like, wow, I see how you take us there, Gibran. I also noticed, Dream Queen, that Gibran said dream 3 times. The word dream is said 3 times in this poem.
3 times. Trust in the dreams. And like seeds dreaming. Dad, you're right. I only circled it the one time.
I was like, what, two? I started counting. I was like, wait a minute. Seeds dreaming, heart dreams of spring, and then trust the dreams.
That's right.
And so I don't think that was a mistake because he's very, careful with his words.
It took 11 years for this book to be finished. He started working on these poems 11 years before it was finally published. And there's a benefactor that he had, a white woman. Her name was Mary somebody. I talked about it in the very first episode when I began this book way back in October. I thought it was going to be quick and we would cover 3 poems a week. Yeah, right. Here we are like 7 months later, like 1 poem a week. And, but this woman had a really, really huge influence on his writing style and what the editing. She edited it with him. So I really want to give her more credit, and we have a bit further to go on this book. But yeah, so just to say that how careful he was.
Right.
It
11 years.
11
It's a whole woman on
Yeah.
every. Yes. I'm saying. So it's. I was really interested in that, how much, how important dreams were a part of On Death, Also, I love that the whole book starts with On Love and ends with On Death. A nice, what they call Ouroboros, wrap it up, bring it back around. So as I was reading On Death, I kept going back to On Love too, because there's a similarity of the kind of surrender that he talks about with love and with death that I was like, yeah, that's real.
Oh, wait, tell me more. Let me get my little
my
pocket copy. Yeah, we'll take it back. I mean,
yeah.
So are there lines that you feel like specifically?
Let me see.
For even as love crowns you, so shall he crucify you.
Right.
I mean, that right there.
Yes.
Though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste to the garden. I'm just going to read it backwards.
Yep. Yep.
That whole little segment starts with, when love beckons to you, follow him, though his ways are hard and steep. And that's the mountaintop, right there too. And when his wings enfold you, yield to him.
Yield.
Though the sword hidden among his pinions may wound you. And when he speaks to you, believe in him, though his voice may shatter your dreams as the north wind lays waste to the garden.
Yes.
And the north wind lays waste to the garden. I mean, that's when we know winter is coming, and we see winter as death, though the seed is still there dreaming beneath the snow.
Yes. Yeah. And in On Death, it says, if you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. There's like, yeah, that surrender theme. I mean, who wants to love sounds horrifying, and as we know, it is.
Right.
Like that poem was so real. I was like, like, yes, come take me under your wing, though I know you have a sword in there
that you are going to
break me.
Right.
Yeah. And so I thought that was beautiful and poetic in and of itself to start with these two things that like we have the pleasure and the horror of dealing with as humans. And that can be scary, but ultimately you don't have a choice. Like if you fall in love, if you fall upon death, you got to do it.
I underline the word melt. For what is it to die but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And you and I were talking yesterday about moths and the chrysalis.
Yeah.
And I heard somewhere that butterflies and moths fully deconstruct and turn into
goo.
Liquid.
Goo. They become goo in the...
Like how... I mean, okay, so we like come from goo and kind of form, but then like to be solid matter, like to come into life from a little egg, that the lifespan of an insect like that, you come out of the egg and then you are a caterpillar, right? You formed, and then you make this thing, and then you turn back into a state of unbeing, and then you come out again and a whole other solid thing, and then somebody squishes you or eats you and like a lizard gets you, and then you back in the ether.
Yeah.
So we were talking about us.
Yes.
And going, we've both met each other. We met each other through a period where we both felt like moths, like going through a huge transformation, death as transformation.
Yes. Absolutely. And the moth is such a good teacher for us on this because, that was my first question for you, I think, was like, what have you died before in life, right? And the moth death of, like, do they even remember being a caterpillar? I mean, the fact that they completely change form, like, is there a consciousness when they're goo? And then they, this part of, I think I was brought to tears when I learned that moths had to struggle through their cocoon by themselves or they wouldn't have the strength to fly. So while you see, and they look like they might take a while to come out of their cocoon, but they have to do it themselves. And that struggle is what allows them to fly. So, and just the very difference of being on the ground and in the sky. So yes, I think it's really special that we both identified with being in that place of struggling through the cocoon to that next stage of flight. And we probably do it many times.
Oh yeah.
And is that a death? Like, how much do we relate to that previous self? Does the moth, miss the days of crawling around? I certainly don't. I release. I release my every past self. Thank you. And I am, becoming the new me. I mean, I think the whole idea actually of becoming yourself is really interesting.
Yeah. I just wrote something down last night. I think I am that I have always been. I dream that I become. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I know that my past selves are still a part of my story. Mm-hmm. And Travis gave me a hard time about this last week, but it is funny still, though. I like this healing, not healed. Okay, so don't test me. You don't want to meet a past self. I'm trying to keep it all under control and make sure, but the moths don't lose the legs. I mean, they come out with wings and they can still rabbit kick you with them.
That's right. They can still crawl. That's so and that's real.
We integrated it all in. But I like to be funny and pretend like I'm so tough because I be on here and talking about all this peace and love, and people understand that it doesn't mean weak. However, that's really interesting. I'm just stuck on the idea of, is there consciousness in the goo? And that if all things, if source and spirit are within all things, and does spirit have consciousness? We are the consciousness of spirit, because we are, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. We are one. Yeah. Consciousness. I feel like we all have us within the ability to access consciousness or knowledge from anywhere, and a lot of ancestral remembering can help with that. I mean, the divine web of things. Like, I almost feel emotional thinking about the life of a moth, because many moths don't live that long. Like, I think the Luna moth is really known for like living for a day, and it's so beautiful. And it goes through this thing, it's goo, comes out, pollinates. Basically it's like, I am one with the earth, and now I am with the sky, and now I'm going to pollinate and make sure that these plants continue. Good night. That's the whole purpose of life. So that's divine, that there's all these little creatures with their roles. to keep this world going. You know, so it's got to be consciousness in the goo. I don't know. Maybe they're in there reading the prophet.
Maybe they in there inspired. Yeah, writing the prophet. I was in there inspiring.
Writing. Yeah.
You just, I mean, really, you just broke down the last three lines for me, because I'm like sitting here. And I'm that kid that crams before class. You know, I did I read it yesterday, and I needed to read it 40 more times. But I'm like sitting here this morning, and I'm like, only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountain top, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. I'm like, he just making up stuff. We had to edit the book. He's trying to say stuff. But no, that's it. You just nailed it. Is being in the connection of all things. Like my contribution is being and then being done and elevating. I don't know.
Yes. Well, I think it's like there's different things, the way that our bodies tie us down.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
So that goo part where you're free of, I don't know if that little caterpillar was like, I feel like I'm the chubby caterpillar, and I don't know if I'm ever going to make a cocoon. And that one already made their cocoon. Will I ever make it? I don't know if they really thinking like that, but just to continue the metaphor, I feel like, to be able to fully release the form, and all that comes with that is like, we don't know nothing about that. We can make, except for in dreams, perhaps, and in our wildest imaginations. But that's where I see those last lines relating to the goo.
Yeah.
When earth, I thought that was, when the earth, I felt the same way. When the earth shall claim your limbs, then you shall truly dance. I'm like, it is poetic.
Yeah.
Sounds cute. But I'm like, oh yeah. Then I was like, you know what? That's real. And then you also kind of have this feeling like, well, how do you know?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It just popped into my head. Like, let's circle back to the ancestors. Let's circle back to people's reports of near-death experiences.
Yes.
Let's go into many people have had experiences of the energetic influence, whether that be hearing voices or seeing shapes of intangible beings, receiving messages. And so, gosh, what just came to me. I don't know who this was. Oh, yeah. Because I wanted to send it to you on Instagram. Is this woman who was a healer in the 9th Ward in New Orleans back in the days, like where everybody looked mad in the pictures. Like back in the old days. She was a black woman, maybe a former slave or like that first generation out of slavery. And Lord forgive me, I can't remember everybody's names today. But she was told that she couldn't be a nurse and these things because she was black and a woman at that time in that area. But she was like, forget it, I'm gonna go. She started her own church down there. And it was in a time where everything was segregated. It was white people and black people and indigenous people all welcome there, all walks of life. And she actually had the power to speak over people and heal them. And when her time came, she, people came from all around and they were sad, and she was like, don't worry. Like, she predicted her own death within months and was like, I'm going to be more powerful on the other side.
Right.
And her legacy still continues. But it's that idea of what we were just talking about. Like, no, I can do more when I'm out of this body.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I feel that. The teacher I spoke about, Dr. Burns, in feeling into what our best ways of communicating with the ancestors are, she asks us to imagine becoming an ancestor, and then what do we want? and I found myself wanting a lot. I was like, I want a fabulous altar. I was like, bring me fresh water every day. And it suddenly made me realize, oh my gosh, this is my people. Like, wow. And the power of, because, ancestors have their power in and of themselves. And yes, it can take witnessing all these miracles. Like for some people, you may have to really witness something, or truly feel something to know it. But at this point, I have no question about it. I understand that a lot of people haven't had the pleasure of getting to build that kind of relationship. But I think the more you learn the ways and medicines and tools that have existed for a very long time of how to kind of open up that connection, the more likely you are to then have a serious experience of what it is to be an ancestor, which, yes, does bring death to a more interesting place. Mm-hmm. For sure. Like after I die, I may contribute in this way. It's actually interesting too, because I experienced my father as both in spirit and reincarnated.
Really?
That actually blew my mind.
I think about that a lot. And when going into the dreaming thing, the way I think about it is like, if my people have reincarnated, am I experiencing their energy in the dreamscape? Like I'm awake, feeling them, but maybe they're in their next incarnation, asleep in the dream realm, or not that anything happens on our timeline in serendipitous ways. There could be messages and imprints left on the astral, in the astral for us, in the Akashic records or whatever. Yeah. Tell me more about your experience. We got about 4 minutes, about 3 minutes.
Well, my dad told me it's about time. Like, it's time. It's just a completely different experience of time. So to be like, how can you both be this and this? It's like, don't worry about it. But also, he put this image in my head of almost like going to this place where you see all time. And so it's almost like for him, he already engaged me through my life and I died. And then he reincarnated. But that, like in his timeline, it's like he watched it, he spoke on everything, he did everything, and then he was, and however time works in the multiple realms, it just worked out. So, yeah.
I believe that we don't all have one experience. And there's all this work to do and all of these experiences to have as particles, our low atomic energy. Yeah. What do we call it? Quantum physics, quantum realities. I mean, we can't get
multiple
into that.
Universes.
No, we're gonna talk about this later. I got some. We just got more to talk about.
Yeah.
Really, really, really deep stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's see. What else do you want to talk about before we wrap this up? As we're beginning to wrap this up, but you said you had some notes in there. Did we cover your notes?
Probably. I mean, yeah, we covered them. We did it. The one thing that's sitting on my heart is just in the moth metaphor and that idea of dying, the death and rebirth that happens in life.
Yes.
Just like those past selves, like that, being able to accept and collect our past selves, that you said the word integration. And I want to be like, yes, like where we can accept, many call it shadow work.
Yes.
Being able to, we don't let our past self die and say like F that. We say, we understand what we learned and we keep all that wisdom inside ourselves. Now, sometimes a past self wants to jump out and say something because it's like, you're not handling this right, So I see inside, I have this council of like all my past selves.
Ooh, the council of selves.
Yes.
Ooh, let me write that down.
Yes.
Y'all can't have that. That's ours.
I said I was trademarked by Jada and Aquia.
That's right. Council of Selves. That's the name of the book.
So there's like this council of selves that I honor all the opinions, but my present self now is kind of that facilitator. And I've done a lot of work to go collect those, soul parts, especially during hard parts of life, to go back and be like, I can hold you, girl. I can hold that past self. And to me, that kind of wholeness is also how I approach the ancestors, that it's not like if an ancestor tells you what to do, you just do it. You have a council of your inner selves. You have a council of family and guides to help guide you. So,
yeah. Huh. Yeah. All right, look, I got to go. I'm going to play this song because I was like, I'm starting to space out a little bit. There's more that I want to touch on. So much more. But Aquia, thank you so much for joining. And I want to have you back on if you're open to it. And we'll find something else to talk about. I think I know who the next author is and what the subject is going to be. And we're going to take it back to civil rights again.
Ooh.
And ancestors. The Reverend Dr. Paulie Murray. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
shoot.
I meant to talk to you yesterday about this, and I dropped it on the air. I see this big old smile.
Exciting.
Yeah. So, and I got to tell you the story of how she came into my view.
I can't
and
wait
it
to
does
hear.
have to do with altars and ancestry and all of that. So
Amazing.
we'll get into it after the show off mic, and we'll bring it back on mic for the people. Everybody, thanks for joining. Don't forget to go to In the Cab Radio at Linktree and get yourself them links. Please go over to In the Cab Radio at Instagram or Facebook and follow me. Okay. It's good. I'm doing a little bit more videos and it's good times. All right, y'all. Love you. Wouldn't be here without you. This is KMRD LP, Madrid, New Mexico. In the Cab Radio is produced by Jada White, aka Dream Queen. Original theme music produced by Baby Weekend Boys and Icky Mac the Beat Jugular. Learn more at In the Cab Radio at Linktree. Thank you so much for tuning in.